Stop running from me, Clara. The Alpha King's voice echoed through the frozen forest. Because every night you disappear, and every night, I will find you. Clara Whitmore froze beneath the tall pine trees, her breath visible in the cold midnight air. She had spent months escaping into the woods beyond Blackthorn territory, hoping the darkness would finally give her a place where nobody looked at her like she didn't belong. But somehow, Adrian Blackthorn always found her, the most powerful alpha in the northern packs, the man whose name carried enough weight to silence an entire hall. And somehow, he was always standing a few feet away from her, looking less like a king and more like someone who was afraid of losing her. Why do you keep bringing me back? Clara asked quietly. Because you don't understand what you're running from, Adrian answered. His silver eyes moved toward the small mark glowing faintly on her wrist. The same mark that had appeared the first time their paths crossed. The same sign the elders whispered about behind closed doors. The sign of a bond that could change the future of every pack. Clara quickly covered it with her sleeve. You shouldn't be here, Your Majesty. Adrian stepped closer, but he stopped before reaching her. He always stopped. That was the one thing that confused her about him. Everyone said Alpha Kings took what they wanted. Everyone said power changed people. But Adrian never forced her to stay. He only waited. The entire pack thinks I'm a problem, Clara said. They think I'm just an Omega who doesn't know her place. Her voice became softer. Maybe they're right. For a moment, the forest was completely silent. Then Adrian looked at her with an expression she had never seen from him before. Not anger. Not authority. Something much deeper. Do you really believe that? He asked. Clara looked away. She remembered every council meeting where she was ignored. Every celebration where she stood at the edge of the room. Every whisper that told her she was ordinary. She had learned that disappearing was easier than being disappointed. But Adrian knew something she didn't. He knew why the ancient symbols reacted to her. He knew why the wolves of the territory became calm when she walked near them. He knew why the old royal records had been hidden for generations. Clara was not a forgotten Omega. She was the last Heartkeeper. And if the wrong people discovered the truth, they would try to turn her into a symbol instead of seeing her as a person. You know something about me, Clara said, finally looking back at him. Adrian didn't answer immediately. The silence itself was an answer. How long have you known? She asked. The Alpha King looked toward the distant lights of the castle behind the trees. Long enough to know that the world was never kind to you. Clara felt her chest tighten. She expected a command. She expected a royal order. Instead, Adrian said the one thing she never expected to hear. I'm not here to take away your freedom, Clara. I'm here because you deserve someone who finally sees you. The glowing mark on her wrist brightened between them, revealing the bond neither of them could ignore. But Clara stepped back, fear crossing her face. If you knew who I was, why did you let me keep running? Adrian's expression changed. Because one day, he said softly, I hoped you would come back because you chose to, not because I found you. And for the first time in years, Clara wondered if the forest had never been her escape. Maybe it had always been the place where the truth was waiting for her. The next morning, Clara Whitmore woke up with one thought repeating in her mind. Adrian Blackthorn had known the truth about her for years. The question was not why he found her every night. The question was why he stayed silent. She returned to Blackthorn Castle before sunrise, walking through the stone halls that had always felt colder than the forest. The castle was home to the most powerful wolf pack in the region, but to Clara, it had always been a place where she felt invisible. Servants lowered their voices when she passed. Pack members watched her with curiosity, and the elders looked at her like she was a mystery they wanted to solve, not a person they wanted to understand. You came back. Adrian stood near the entrance of the great hall, dressed in his royal black coat. His expression remained calm, but Clara noticed the relief in his eyes. Do not mistake this for trust, Clara said. I came back because I need answers. Adrian nodded. You deserve them. Before he could explain, the doors of the council chamber opened. The elder members of the pack stepped outside, their attention immediately turning toward Clara. Among them was Elder Marcus Vale, the oldest advisor to the Alpha Throne. So the missing Omega finally returns, Marcus said. His words were polite, but the meaning behind them was clear. Clara felt every old memory return. The feeling of being judged. The feeling of being less important. But this time, she did not lower her eyes. Adrian noticed. Watch your words, he said quietly. The entire hall became silent. The pack knew that tone. The Alpha King rarely raised his voice, but when he spoke with that calm authority, everyone listened. Marcus looked between Adrian and Clara. Your Majesty, the pack has questions. This Omega has been hiding near royal territory for months. Now we discover she carries an ancient mark connected to forgotten legends. Clara looked at Adrian. They knew? She asked. Adrian hesitated. That small pause hurt more than any answer. Some of them suspected, he admitted. I kept the information from spreading. You protected me, Clara said. Or did you protect your throne? The words landed harder than she expected. Adrian did not defend himself immediately, because he understood why she questioned him. Years ago, he had discovered old royal records describing the Heartkeeper bloodline. The records spoke of an Omega whose presence could restore balance between divided packs. But they also warned that powerful people would try to control her destiny. Adrian had made a choice. He hid the truth. He believed silence was protection. But now he wondered if silence had created another kind of pain. I was wrong to decide for you, Adrian finally said. Clara looked at him, surprised. She expected excuses. She expected a king protecting his reputation. Instead, she saw someone admitting his mistake. Before she could answer, a young pack messenger entered the hall carrying an old sealed letter from the Northern Territories. Your Majesty, the messenger said. This was found among the abandoned royal archives. It mentions the Heartkeeper, and it mentions the last Alpha King who tried to control one. Adrian opened the letter slowly. His expression changed as he read the final line. Clara watched him carefully. What does it say? She asked. Adrian looked up. It says the Heartkeeper was never meant to serve the crown. The room fell silent. Then he added, she was meant to choose who deserves it. For the first time, Clara realized the secret surrounding her was bigger than she imagined. And somewhere inside the castle, someone else already knew she had returned. Clara Whitmore had spent years believing the safest place for her was somewhere nobody could see her. But standing inside the great hall of Blackthorn Castle, surrounded by the same people who once ignored her, she realized something had changed. She was no longer trying to disappear. She was finally asking why she had been forgotten. The old letter from the Royal Archives remained on Adrian Blackthorn's desk, its words creating a silence that felt heavier than any accusation. The Heartkeeper was never meant to serve the crown. She was meant to choose who deserves it. Those words stayed in Clara's mind as she walked through the castle halls later that day. You are thinking too loudly, Adrian said behind her. Clara stopped and turned. I did not know Alpha Kings could read thoughts. A small smile appeared on his face. I cannot, but I have learned that when you are upset, you walk faster. Clara looked away, surprised that he noticed something so simple. You notice too much. Only when it comes to you. His answer was quiet, almost too honest. Clara looked toward the windows overlooking the packlands. Below, hundreds of wolves lived under the protection of the Blackthorn Crown. The territory was beautiful, but she knew beauty could hide problems. How many people in this pack feel invisible? She asked. Adrian studied her carefully. More than I want to admit. That answer stayed with her. For the first time, she saw that the Alpha King was not just a symbol of power. He was a man carrying the weight of every decision made under his name. But before their conversation could continue, the doors of the training hall opened. Several pack members entered for the morning gathering. Clara immediately felt the change in the room. The whispers started. That is the Omega from the forest. The one connected to the old legend. Why is the king protecting her? Clara had heard those voices before. She knew how quickly rumors could become judgment. Elder Marcus Vale stepped forward. The pack deserves clarity, Your Majesty. If this Omega carries a royal secret, then everyone has the right to know what role she will play. Clara felt Adrian shift beside her. His instinct was to step between her and the pressure. But before he could speak, Clara raised her hand. I am standing right here, she said. The room went quiet. Marcus looked surprised. Clara continued. If there are questions about me, ask me. Do not speak about me like I am a story from an old book. Adrian watched her with a look she could not understand. It was not surprise. It was respect. A few members of the pack exchanged uncertain glances. They had expected a frightened Omega. They saw someone different. Someone who had spent years being overlooked and still chose to stand with kindness. Later that evening, Clara visited the edge of the territory where younger wolves often gathered. She noticed something strange. A nervous young wolf approached her, then relaxed almost instantly when she placed her hand near him. The same thing happened with others. The pack animals trusted her before the people did. Adrian found her there beneath the fading sunlight. "They know who you are," he said. Clara looked at him. "The wolves." He nodded. "They feel what others cannot." Clara looked back at the peaceful scene, realizing her connection to the pack was not about power. It was about understanding. But then Adrian's expression changed. A messenger arrived from the northern border with a warning. Someone had discovered the Heartkeeper's return, and this time, they were not asking questions. They were preparing to challenge everything Adrian had built. The message from the northern border changed everything inside Blackthorn Castle. For years, Alpha King Adrian Blackthorn had carried the responsibility of protecting every pack under his rule. But now, the greatest challenge was not an enemy outside the territory. It was the truth hidden within his own kingdom. Clara Whitmore stood beside the large windows of the royal library, watching the snow cover the land below. She could feel the tension moving through the pack. Everyone knew something had changed. Everyone knew she was no longer just the Omega who disappeared into the forest. "You should not be here alone," Adrian said as he entered the room. Clara turned toward him. "That sounds like a command." Adrian stopped and shook his head. "No, it is a concern." She looked at him carefully. "That is difficult to tell with you." "Why?" "Because you are the Alpha King. Everyone expects you to decide everything." Adrian became quiet. For someone with an entire pack depending on him, admitting uncertainty was not easy. "Maybe that is my problem," he said. "I spent so much time believing leadership meant carrying everything alone that I forgot other people deserve a choice." Clara looked down at the ancient book resting on the table. It contained information about the Heartkeeper bloodline, but every page raised more questions. "The bond between us," she said softly. "Is it real because of who I am? Or because of some old prophecy?" Adrian looked at her, and for once, there was no royal distance between them. "Clara, I knew the bond existed before I knew the reason behind it." She stayed silent. "When I first saw you years ago, you were standing outside the pack gathering, trying to make yourself invisible. Everyone walked past you. Everyone ignored you." His voice lowered. "But you stopped to help an injured wolf near the forest. You did not know it was watching you. You did not know anyone important was paying attention. You just helped because it was the right thing to do." Clara remembered that night. She had thought nobody noticed. "You saw me?" she asked. Adrian nodded. "I did." The honesty in his voice made her look away. The mate bond between them had always confused her. She feared it was something written by fate, something that removed her ability to choose. But Adrian was showing her something different. The bond connected them. It did not control them. Before Clara could answer, the doors opened. Elder Marcus entered with several council members behind him. "Your Majesty, the Northern Packs are demanding a meeting." Adrian's expression hardened. "Demanding?" Marcus placed a document on the table. "They believe the Heartkeeper should be placed under royal protection until the situation is resolved." Clara immediately understood what they meant. Protection could easily become another word for control. Adrian looked at the document, then at Clara. Everyone expected him to make the decision. Everyone expected the king to speak first. But instead, Adrian stepped back. "Clara." She looked surprised. "What?" "I want them to hear your answer." The room went silent. For generations, Omega voices had rarely shaped pack decisions. But now the Alpha King was giving her the choice. Clara looked at the council members who had once dismissed her. She took a slow breath. "I am not a secret to be hidden. I am not a weapon for anyone to use. If the pack wants my help, they will have to respect my choice." Outside the castle walls, the wolves began to howl. Not in fear, in recognition. But far away in the Northern Territory, someone read the same ancient records and whispered the one truth Adrian had hoped would remain hidden. The Heartkeeper has awakened. The great hall of Blackthorn Castle had never felt so divided. For generations, the Alpha Throne had represented order, strength, and tradition. But now, every member of the pack was watching one question unfold before them. Would the Alpha King protect an old system, or would he protect the choice of the woman who had changed everything? Clara Whitmore stood beside Adrian Blackthorn as the council members waited for his decision. She could feel their expectations. They wanted the king to speak. They wanted the Alpha to claim control of the situation. But Adrian remained silent. Instead, he looked at Clara. "This is your choice," he said. Several elders exchanged surprised looks. Elder Marcus Vale stepped forward. "Your Majesty, with respect, this is not a personal matter. The Heartkeeper carries a responsibility that affects every pack. Clara looked at him calmly. A responsibility does not mean losing my freedom. Marcus studied her for a moment. You speak like someone who understands the weight of leadership. Clara almost smiled. I understand the weight of being ignored. The room became quiet. Those words reached deeper than any argument could, because many in the pack knew exactly what she meant. They had seen Omega members pushed aside for years. They had accepted the old rules because changing them seemed impossible. Adrian watched Clara carefully. He had spent his entire life preparing to lead. But standing beside her, he realized something important. Leadership was not about having every answer. Sometimes, it was about creating space for others to be heard. Later that evening, Adrian found Clara in the Royal Archives. She was surrounded by old records, searching through forgotten pages about the Heartkeeper bloodline. You should rest, Adrian said. Clara did not look up. You should stop telling people what they should do. A small smile appeared on his face. Fair enough. She turned a page carefully. Why did your family hide the truth? Adrian became quiet. It was the question he had been avoiding. Because the crown was afraid. Clara looked at him. The Alpha King's family was afraid? Not of losing power, Adrian said. Of losing control. He walked toward the old records. The first Heartkeeper was never a servant of the throne. She helped choose leaders who understood compassion. But over time, some rulers changed the story. They wanted the Heartkeeper to strengthen their authority. Clara looked at the ancient symbols on the page. So my bloodline disappeared because people were afraid of what I represented. Adrian nodded. You represented balance. And balance is dangerous to people who only want power. The words stayed between them. Then Clara noticed something written in the corner of an old document. A name. A royal family member from generations ago. The same symbol that appeared on her wrist. Adrian, she whispered. Your family did not just hide the Heartkeeper. He looked at the page. His expression changed. They made a promise. Clara read the final line aloud. The Alpha King must never choose the crown over the Heartkeeper. A heavy silence filled the archive. Adrian looked away. That promise was broken before I was born. Clara studied him. And what will you do? For the first time, Adrian did not answer as a king. He answered as a man. I will not repeat their mistake. Before Clara could respond, a messenger rushed into the archive with urgent news. The Northern Packs had made their decision. They were no longer asking for a meeting. They were calling for a challenge to Adrian's leadership. And attached to the message was a warning meant for Clara. The Heartkeeper must choose where her loyalty belongs. For the first time in years, Clara Whitmore stood in the center of Blackthorn Castle and felt that running away was no longer the answer. The forest had always been her escape. It was where she went when the world felt too heavy, when whispers became too loud, and when being unseen felt safer than being judged. But now, the forest felt different. It was no longer a place to hide. It was a place that reminded her who she was. The warning from the Northern Packs remained on Adrian Blackthorn's desk. The words were simple, but their meaning carried the weight of generations. The Heartkeeper must choose where her loyalty belongs. Clara stared at the message for a long moment. They want me to choose between them and you, she said. Adrian stood near the window, looking toward the distant mountains. They want you to believe there are only two choices. Clara looked at him. And there are not. Adrian turned around. No, there is a third choice. Which is, you choose yourself. His answer surprised her. She expected him to ask for her support. She expected the Alpha King to remind her of the bond between them. Instead, he was giving her the one thing she had always wanted. A choice. Why are you making this easy for me? Clara asked. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Because I know what it feels like to have everyone decide your life before you even speak. She looked at him carefully. Behind the crown and the responsibility, she saw someone carrying his own invisible burden. Adrian had been raised to become a leader. He had been taught that every decision affected thousands of lives. But nobody had ever asked what he wanted. The mate bond does not decide everything, Clara said softly. Adrian nodded. It connects us. It does not own us. Those words changed something inside her. For so long, Clara feared that the bond was another chain. Another reason people would see her as a role instead of a person. But Adrian had never asked her to become someone else. He had only asked her to stop believing she had no value. Later that night, Clara returned to the forest alone. Not to escape, to think. The trees were quiet beneath the moonlight, and the same path she had walked countless times felt unfamiliar. She reached the clearing where she used to sit and disappear from the world. But this time, she noticed something she had missed before. Small signs of life surrounded the area. The forest wolves gathered nearby, calm and peaceful. They were not watching her like she was a stranger. They recognized her. "You were never lost," a voice said behind her. Clara turned and saw Adrian standing at the edge of the clearing. She sighed softly. "You really do always find me." Adrian smiled slightly. "Not tonight." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Tonight. I followed because I wanted to make sure you were safe. But I would have left if you asked me to." Clara looked at him, realizing the difference. He was not chasing her. He was respecting her. Before she could answer, the forest grew strangely quiet. The wolves lifted their heads toward the northern mountains. Clara felt a sudden warmth from the mark on her wrist. Something was calling to her. Something ancient. Something connected to the Heartkeeper bloodline. Adrian noticed the change in her expression. "What did you feel?" Clara looked toward the darkness beyond the trees. "Someone is trying to awaken something that should have stayed hidden." The next morning, Clara made a decision. She walked into the great hall before the entire pack and spoke clearly. "I will meet the northern leaders." The room filled with whispers. Adrian looked at her, concerned. "Clara, you do not have to face this alone." She met his eyes. "I know." A small pause followed. "That is why I am not running anymore." But as the pack prepared for the meeting, a hidden figure inside the castle opened an old royal record. The final page revealed a truth even Adrian did not know. The Heartkeeper was not only connected to the Alpha King. She was connected to the fall of the previous royal bloodline. The journey to the Northern Territory was supposed to be a diplomatic meeting, a chance for the Alpha King and the Heartkeeper to bring the divided packs together. But from the moment Clara Whitmore and Adrian Blackthorne crossed into the northern lands, they felt something was wrong. The silence was different. The wolves watched from a distance. The pack members whispered as they passed. Clara had spent years being ignored, but now she understood something important. Being invisible was easy. Being seen came with a different kind of pressure. "Are you sure about this?" Adrian asked as they approached the Northern Council Hall. Clara looked ahead. No, her honesty surprised him. "But I am tired of making choices based on fear." Adrian studied her for a moment. "That may be the strongest thing you have ever said." Clara smiled slightly. "You mean because I finally stopped running?" "I mean because you finally stopped apologizing for existing." His words stayed with her. Inside the council hall, the northern leaders waited. Their representative, Alpha Rowan Mercer, stood at the center of the room. He was not aggressive. He was calm, experienced, and clearly someone who had spent years building influence among the packs. "King Adrian," Rowan said, "you have brought the Heartkeeper here." Adrian answered carefully. "She came because she chose to." Clara noticed the difference immediately. Adrian did not speak for her. He introduced her choice. Rowan looked at Clara. "Do you understand what your bloodline means?" Clara nodded. "I understand that people have spent generations deciding what I should become." The room became quiet. But nobody asked what I wanted. Some of the northern leaders exchanged uncertain looks. They expected an Omega connected to an ancient legacy. They did not expect someone who challenged the very idea behind that legacy. Rowan stepped closer to the old records on the table. "Your family disappeared because the Heartkeeper refused to support a weak ruler." Clara looked at him. "And what happened after that?" Rowan's expression changed slightly. "The packs lost balance." Adrian looked at the documents. "That is not the whole story." Everyone turned toward him. Adrian continued. "The records were changed. The Heartkeeper was not a threat to the crown. The Heartkeeper was a reminder that the crown had limits." The room fell silent. Clara looked at Adrian. He had known the truth. But this time, he was not hiding it from her. He was standing beside her. Then Rowan revealed something unexpected. "There is one thing you do not know, King Adrian." He opened an old document. "Your family did not only protect the Heartkeeper bloodline. They made a promise to it." Adrian took the document. His expression changed as he read the words. Clara watched him carefully. "What does it say?" Adrian looked at her. "That an Alpha King who chooses power over balance will lose the right to lead." The meaning was clear. The ancient rules were not testing Clara. They were testing him. The Northern Council had not called this meeting to judge the Heartkeeper. They had called it to judge the Alpha King. Outside the hall, the pack members waited for an answer. Adrian looked toward them, then back at Clara. For years, He had believed being a good king meant never showing uncertainty. But now he understood that real leadership required something harder. It required honesty. "I will not ask Clara to prove her worth," Adrian said. "I will prove that this throne deserves her trust." The words spread through the hall. But before anyone could respond, a messenger arrived from Blackthorn Castle with unexpected news. Someone inside the royal court had revealed Adrian's oldest secret. The pack was beginning to question not Clara's place beside the king, but whether Adrian had been worthy of the crown at all. The message from Blackthorn Castle arrived before sunrise, but the news inside it had already begun spreading through every pack territory. The royal court was questioning Adrian Blackthorn's leadership, not because he had failed to protect his people, not because he had broken the laws of the packs, but because he had hidden the truth about the Heartkeeper for years. Clara Whitmore watched Adrian read the message in silence. She had seen him face pressure before. She had seen him stand before hundreds of wolves without hesitation. But this was different. This was not a challenge against the Alpha King. It was a challenge against the man beneath the crown. "They think you betrayed them," Clara said quietly. Adrian folded the message. "They are not completely wrong." Clara looked at him. "Adrian." He looked toward the mountains outside the Northern Council Hall. "I spent years believing I was protecting everyone by carrying every secret alone. But sometimes, hiding the truth creates a different kind of damage." Clara understood that feeling. She had hidden herself for years because she thought disappearing would keep her safe. Now she realized Adrian had done something similar. He had hidden behind responsibility. Together, they returned to Blackthorn Castle, where the entire pack gathered in the Great Hall. The atmosphere felt different from before. Clara remembered standing there as someone nobody wanted to hear. Now every eye was on her. But this time, she did not feel small. Elder Marcus Vale stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the council believes the crown must answer for the decisions made in secret." Adrian nodded. "That is fair." The hall became quiet. Nobody expected the Alpha King to accept responsibility so easily. Marcus continued. "Then explain why the Heartkeeper was hidden from the pack." Adrian looked around the room. "Because I was afraid." A wave of surprise moved through the crowd. An Alpha King admitting fear was something many had never witnessed. Adrian continued. "I was afraid that if people discovered Clara's identity, they would stop seeing her as a person. They would see only her bloodline, her power, her purpose." Clara felt her expression soften. Those words were exactly what she had feared her entire life. "But I made a mistake," Adrian said. "I decided what was best for her without asking what she wanted." The room stayed silent. Then Clara stepped forward. "And I made my own mistake," she said. Everyone looked at her. "I believed being forgotten meant I had no value. I thought the only way to protect myself was to disappear." She looked toward the pack members. "But a pack is not supposed to be built on fear. It is supposed to be built on trust." For the first time, many members of the pack lowered their heads in respect. Not because of her title, because of her courage. Then Elder Marcus placed the ancient royal record on the table. "There is still one final question." He looked at Adrian. "Will you choose the crown, or will you choose the balance your family promised to protect?" Adrian looked at Clara. The mate bond between them was quiet but undeniable. Yet he knew the answer could not come from destiny. It had to come from his own choice. He stepped away from the throne. A crown is only valuable if it serves the people beneath it. The hall fell silent. Then one by one, the pack members began to show their support. But before the moment could settle, the ancient symbol on Clara's wrist began to glow. The old records had revealed one final warning. The Heartkeeper's awakening was only the beginning. A hidden enemy within the royal circle had been waiting for this exact moment. And they were ready to reveal the truth that could change everything. The great hall of Blackthorn Castle had never been this quiet. The ancient symbol on Clara Whitmore's wrist continued to glow softly, revealing that the story everyone believed they understood was still incomplete. For generations, the packs had searched for the meaning of the Heartkeeper. They believed it was about power. They believed it was about choosing the strongest leader. But now Clara understood the truth. It was never about finding someone powerful enough to control the future. It was about finding someone humble enough to protect it. Adrian Blackthorn stood before the council, no longer hiding behind the image of the perfect Alpha King. The crown on his head represented responsibility, but it also represented every mistake made before him. "The truth has been hidden for too long," Adrian said. Not because we were protecting the pack, because we were protecting our own comfort. His words surprised everyone, including the elders. Clara watched him carefully. She had spent so long believing powerful people never admitted when they were wrong. Adrian proved otherwise. Elder Marcus Vale stepped forward with the final royal record. The last page was sealed by the first Heartkeeper herself. He opened the document and read the words aloud. The alpha who rules through fear will lose the loyalty of the pack. The alpha who listens will earn it. The message was not a threat. It was a reminder. A leader could demand obedience, but true leadership had to be earned. Adrian looked around the hall. For years, I believed being an alpha king meant standing above everyone else. He paused. I was wrong. It means standing with them. Clara felt the weight of those words. She remembered the girl who walked into the forest every night because she believed nobody would ever choose her. She remembered feeling like an outsider among her own people. But now, the same pack that ignored her was listening. Not because of an ancient bloodline, not because of a legend, because she had finally found the courage to speak. There is one more thing, Clara said. Everyone turned toward her. The Heartkeeper was never meant to replace the Alpha King, and the Alpha King was never meant to own the Heartkeeper. Her voice remained calm. The future of the packs cannot be built on one person carrying everything. It has to be built on trust. Adrian looked at her, and for the first time, Clara saw no distance between the king and the man. The mate bond between them remained, but it was no longer something that defined them. It was something they chose to honor. Months later, Blackthorn territory began to change. The council opened its doors to voices that had been ignored for generations. Omega members were no longer treated as background figures in pack decisions. They became advisors, healers, leaders, and respected members of their communities. Adrian remained Alpha King, but his rule felt different. He listened before he decided. He asked before he commanded. And whenever the weight of the crown became too heavy, Clara reminded him that even kings needed someone who could see the person beneath the title. One evening, they returned to the forest where everything had started. The same trees stood beneath the moonlight. The same path where Clara once ran away now felt like home. Adrian looked at her and smiled. Do you still come here to escape? Clara looked around the forest, then back at him. No, she paused. I come here to remember. Remember what? He asked. Clara smiled softly. That I was never invisible. I was just waiting for someone to see me. Adrian reached for her hand, and together they walked beneath the trees that had witnessed their journey. A forgotten Omega had found her voice. A powerful Alpha King had learned that strength was not control. And a kingdom had discovered that the greatest leaders are not the ones who stand above everyone else, but the ones willing to stand beside them. Because sometimes, the person the world overlooks is the very person who can remind everyone what true loyalty, love, and honor really mean.